Hi, this is Dan Smith of DPS Legal Counsel. Welcome to today's video. Today I want to talk to business owners who are either selling or marketing their products or services through the internet, online sales, e-commerce, and marketing, which is just about every business these days. It seems like everyone in business has increased their business activity on the internet during the COVID pandemic. And it's obviously the new trend and the wave of the future to do business online. And so today's video is going to speak to, if not every single business out there, most businesses, because most businesses are doing business on the internet. And so today I want to talk about a recent case that was decided in a state court in California, which is going to be something that every business owner needs to know about and take into account in doing business on the internet. This case comes out of the Court of Appeals of the state of California, and the case name is Thurston versus Fairfield Collectibles of Georgia, LLC. Now, Fairfield Collectibles of Georgia, LLC, is apparently the largest seller of die-cast models in the country, making their sales through catalog sales and online website sales. And Fairfield Collectibles is a Georgia corporation, a Georgia limited liability company, a Georgia entity. Its principal place of business is in Georgia. It has no office in California and never has, and it has no employees in California and never has. And what happened is that two California residents filed a lawsuit against Fairfield Collectibles, alleging that their website is not accessible to blind purchasers. In other words, customers or potential customers who need to use screen readers to access websites were unable to access the Fairfield Collectibles website in order to purchase some of their products. And so they filed a lawsuit against Fairfield Collectibles under a state Civil Rights Act in California called the Unruh Civil Rights Act. There's also a similar act in New York. And so what this alleged was they were denied their rights to purchase or to access the website that Fairfield Collectibles maintains because of their disability. And the state statute in California references the Americans with Disabilities Act, and so there's that overlay to this lawsuit. Apparently, there are a lot of these kinds of lawsuits going on against websites if it is alleged that their websites are not readily accessible by people with disabilities, typically blind individuals who need to use screen readers in order to access a website. And so they filed this lawsuit against Fairfield Collectibles, and Fairfield Collectibles moved to quash the summons that started the lawsuit. The summons against them filed a motion to basically quash the summons in the lawsuit. And the trial court agreed and did that. The plaintiffs appealed, and that's what this decision is about. It's a decision from the Court of Appeals in California. And essentially what it did is it said, no, this case can go forward, and it undid the quashing of the summons against Fairfield Collectibles and said, yes, this case can go forward. Based on an analysis that said that even though Fairfield Collectibles is a Georgia entity, even though its principal place of business is in Georgia, even though it has no location, physical location or business address in California, and even though it employs and has and never has had employees in California, the mere fact that it makes a substantial number of sales in California led the court to determine that the case could go forward. It basically said, looked at the facts and said that Fairfield Collectibles made about 8% of their total sales in California, and some of the sales were to wholesalers, but if you look at just sales to consumers in California, it was about 10% of their sales were made in California. And based on that level of sales, and I think the dollar amount of sales in California was over $300,000, between $320 and $375. That level of activity, economic activity or sales in California was enough for the appeals court, state appeals court in California, to say that Fairfield Collectibles, this Georgia entity, this Georgia principal place of business company, is subject to being sued in California because their website is allegedly not readily accessible to blind prospective purchasers using a screen reader. There are a couple of key points that I think this case illustrates for businesses that are doing business, having websites, and doing e-commerce through the internet. Number one, businesses just need to be aware that there are lawsuits being filed against e-commerce businesses doing business, making sales in numerous states through the internet. There are cases being filed against them alleging that their websites are not accessible to people with disabilities. And so if you're setting up a business or you're running a business, you need to be aware that that is a real thing, and you need to look into making sure that your website is readily accessible by persons with disabilities. Otherwise, if you're making sales in a state like California or perhaps New York that have these state laws that piggyback off of the Americans with Disabilities Act, you may find yourself subject to being a defendant in one of these website accessibility lawsuits. That's number one. Number two is just to be aware generally that it's easy enough to set up your business and to set up a website and start doing e-commerce business, but there are often traps out there for the unwary, and this is just one of them. So it always makes sense before you just jump in and start doing a lot of business and activity to not only have your corporation or your LLC properly set up with the right documentation, the right operating agreements, all of that, to check into the regulatory issues that might arise through doing business. And if you're doing business on the internet, which is most people these days, you're going to run into perhaps some unusual laws that you're not necessarily that familiar with from other states where you're making sales that you're going to have to take into account, such as this UNRRA Civil Rights Act in California. So that's what I wanted to do today, to just almost like a public service announcement for small businesses that are doing business on the internet, to put you on notice, make you aware that these website accessibility lawsuits are out there. So if you're doing business on the on your website, doing business on the internet, doing e-commerce, making sales in other states, particularly in California, you need to make sure that you have taken into account the requirements of website accessibility. Otherwise, you could find yourself as the target of a lawsuit. Okay, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please feel free to call. or send me just go to my website, check it out, and send me an email, and I'd be glad to talk with you. And that's it for today, and we'll see you next time.